Hey guys, this is Hayes with CheatSheetPros.com. Today is April 14th, 2022. MLB's been underway for about a week, and I've been waiting on some stats to kind of fill in the MLB cheat sheet to start doing some of the tutorials. So the first one I'm going to take a look at daily fantasy. So typically when you're playing DFS and you're doing baseball, you have to stack. So if you don't know what stacking is, it's basically taking 3 to 5 players on the same team that are all correlated in hopes that they go off. Now, we can do some more advanced stuff on stacking, and you can do 4-4, 5-3, 3-5. There's so many different possible combinations, but I don't look at any projections because they're just averages. I just look at stacks and the pitchers I want to use. Some of the key things to look for are how's the team doing, BVP data, righty versus lefty. There's so much stuff you can look at in baseball. So let me show you the two main places that I do when I flip through the sheet. Now, over this first week of baseball, I've been swamped at work, so I haven't had time to do a lot of fantasy. I put in one lineup, doubled my money, and that was pretty much all I've done. So over here we have our daily stacks, our pitchers, hitters, and our stacker tab. So pitchers and hitters we'll get into more later on. For your individual hitters, this is going to give you a great detail of everything this hitter does. We even have our custom grade on it. However, this grade isn't all the way filled in because we don't have 2022 pitcher stats yet. Most of them need a minimum of 7 innings. But we have their DK, FanDuel stats, salaries. We have their fantasy point production. We have their BVP history versus the pitcher they're facing. And then I love this column. So this is going to show the pitcher handedness. And then it's going to show all of these stats versus lefties versus righties. So you can really spend some time and dig down onto this if you want. But I'm going to keep this video short and sweet. So the two tabs we're going to focus on are the stacker tab and the daily stacks tab. So for the stacker tab, when you pull it up, this is what it's initially going to look at. It's going to be sorted, or at least I try to sort it most days, by Vegas projected runs. So typically if you see a fantasy analyst talking about stacks, they're going to look at the Vegas projections and pick some of the top few teams that are projected the highest because that's one of the best places to go. We also have the time slot in here. I try to get every slate of every game in here. If it's a showdown slate, it doesn't necessarily pull in because DK has some funky numbers on them. But if it's over 5, you can see we sort it green. If it's in the 4s, it's this kind of goldish yellow. If it's below 4.2, then it's just kind of blue and icky. So over here you see this not main. These are usually showdown slates, like the St. Louis and Milwaukee game is a showdown slate today. And the reason LAA doesn't pull over is because Shohei Ohtani is in the projected lineup as a hitter, but DraftKings does not allow him as a hitter. So it pulls a 0 for the salary, so it kind of kicks it out. So I've contacted them and asked them if they could add that, but DraftKings did not have Shohei as a batter, so I didn't get any luck. So when we're looking at this is going to show us the last 2 weeks stats. It's going to be runs per game, team batting average, WRC plus, and then the power ranking. So if you don't want to look at average and WRC plus, just look at the power ranking and that will break it down for you. The cost of the stack is key. And you can see I've got a little table down here that's going to show you stack cost when building a lineup. So the average per hitter is what I look at. So if you're over 5,000 per hitter, it's expensive. So you really have to have some value pitching. If you're that 46 to 49.99 per hitter, and this is focusing on DraftKings, you can build, but you need to get some value plays or at least one value pitcher. The key range is this 4,350 to 4,600. That's kind of where I want to be because I can get 2 solid pitchers. I can get some stud people in my lineups. If you get less than 4,350 per hitter, that's going to give you 2 stud pitchers, and that's a fun stack to go after. If it's under 4,000 per hitter, it's a fun build because you're going to get 2 stud pitchers you can pay up for, and you're going to fill your lineups in with the Mike Trout and Vlad Guerrero and Bo Bichette's of the world. So this is just a little breakdown. I have a lot of questions on this, or at least I did last year, so I wanted to put that in there and just kind of break it down. So this is where we focus on the cost of the stack. So the 5 highest hitters is going to be in this column, and that is the most expensive stack you could build. So you can see we've got 3,100 all the way up to 5,000. So of course a Yankee stack at 5,000 is going to be the most expensive. And then I wanted to get a range, so then the 2 through 6 highest hitters, so excluding the 1 stud, this is the range we're going to be in. So like, for example, Pittsburgh, we can say, all right, we can reasonably stack this team for 3,560 to 3,900 per hitter. And then based off the Vegas projected runs, it gives you a percentage in this column. So one of the first things I can do is I can flip this column up and say, okay, who's got the best value? So here, Colorado has 117% value based on the cost because Vegas is projecting them for 5.7 runs. So that one's going to be pretty popular, not very contrarian there. But if you come down here to Pittsburgh at projected 4.7 on Vegas, and you can get this for as low as 3,560 per hitter. And you look down here, under 4,000, that's a key place if you want to fill in with studs. So that would be a fun stack that we could possibly go after. And then we go down here, we have the Cubs. Well, they're projected 5.3. And then we can go down here to the Dodgers, 5.2. What we like about this also gives you a quick look at the weather. So this green, wind blowing out at 7 miles an hour, blowing out at 11, those are key things to look at when you're doing stacks. So if you were looking at this and this blowing out is something we would want to look at. Oakland, for some reason, is absolutely dirt cheap for their hitters, so I need to see if that pulled something wrong, but that kind of jumps out at me as 3,100 per hitter is extremely low. Vegas is only projecting him at 3.3 runs, so that salary could be caked in there. So I typically sort this, and I'll kind of look at the Vegas runs, look at the salaries, and then I can go over and look at the team and see how they're doing and kind of break it down from there and pick some. So just glancing at this, one that does jump out at me is the Chicago White Sox. You can see they're 4th in the power ranking over the last 14 days, which is probably 4 or 5 games. They're scoring 5.6 runs per game, batting .269 as a team. And your WRC plus number, 100 is kind of even. If it goes below 100, consider that negative. If it's over 100, that's a positive. So they're at 125, so that's good. Price range, 48 to 44. If I could get in this 44 range, that would interest me. And Vegas, you can see out of all the projections down here, they would be the one that's projected the highest out of this lower tier range. And then you want to come over here, take a look at the pitcher. Who are they facing? The team, home, road. Is it a righty? Is it a lefty? You can see the team BVP data. I've spent a lot of time pulling in the batter versus pitcher data for the entire starting lineup. So, for example, Wainwright, he has faced this starting lineup for 187 at-bats. He's given up 47 hits, a .251 average, but he does have 32 strikeouts, but it's only a 17% strikeout rate, so that's pretty low. So take that with a grain of salt if it's less than 50, 60 at-bats as a team, and we'll look at that more when we go to the Daily Stacks tab. So if you get this like 4 for 10, 5 for 18, 2 for 3, it's pretty much meaningless. But if you get 187, 112, 84 at-bats, those are ones you want to look at. So right here, this is a pretty good one. So if I was looking for a pitcher, I would look at Woodruff. Now, he did have a rough first start, but you can see here, he's faced this lineup for 112 at-bats. He held them to a .223 batting average and a massive 29% strikeout rate. So we do not want to stack against him unless we're being really contrarian. But this would be a pitcher that would jump out at me that I would potentially take a look at. And then you can kind of scroll down here, and here we got one. So Gausman, he has 68 at-bats. It's not a ton, but he's given up a .324 average, which isn't good, but he does have a 28% strikeout rate, so that's kind of mix and match a little bit. Here's one that really kind of jumps out. Luis Severino, we know he was injured last year. He does have 29 at-bats versus the team, which typically I say that's not enough to really, give a squat, but 3 for 29, allowing a 103 batting average with a 45% strikeout rate. Okay, that's something that kind of perks me up to maybe take a shot on Severino. So I'll look for stacks here, and you can use this to find pitchers and, kind of pencil them down, get an idea of who you like, who you don't like, and that will help you build some of your lineups. Over here, we don't have any 2022 stats yet, waiting on the minimums to come in, but I do have the ERA and xFIP from last year come in, and then the bullpen. Let me make sure you can see this. Okay. So bullpen data is key. So typically this early in the year, pitchers are going, I think I heard on the radio when I was driving around today, they hadn't had a pitcher go over 80 or 85 pitches yet this year, or maybe it was one team. I don't know. My brain is mush right now. But I got the bullpen rankings, our custom ranking right here. So if you just want to look at that and say, hey, it's the 27th bullpen, all right, that's one we want to target. But you can look at their xFIP. xFIP, I get a lot of questions on. Baseball is known for hundreds of stats, and everybody's got a key stat they look at. Think of xFIP as what their ERA should be, not what it is. So if someone has a low xFIP, but a high ERA, that's probably a low-owned pitcher you can go after. That means they're going to get better. What you want to be careful of is if they have a really low ERA, everybody's playing him, but if their xFIP is really high, that means they've been lucky and they're about to get blasted. So to give you an example, let's say this pitcher right here, Dane Dunning. So last year, I'd want to look and see how many innings he threw, but he had a 4.51 ERA, so that's average, not great, but his xFIP and this HR, this is home road split. So he is on the road, so this is his xFIP on the road for last year was 3.18. So that was pretty good. So this shows you that he was better than what his ERA says. And then we'll flip down here to Wainwright. So he had an ERA of 3.05. He's at home, but at home he had an xFIP of 4.02. So he was actually closer to a 4 ERA pitcher than a 3, what is showing. So that's one thing when you compare ERA and xFIP to keep an eye on. Now, when we're looking at bullpen, I pull the xFIP. I don't really care about the ERA. I want to know what, should it be independent of all of the fielding. And then I like having the batting average there. It's just kind of fun to look at. So here, this is a bad bullpen. It ranks 29th. It has an xFIP of 407. They're giving up a 320 batting average so far. So that could be a team we want to go after. And that's the Royals. I live in Kansas City for those of you that are new or just following, so I didn't like to see that, but I kind of figured as much as the Cleveland Guardians walloped us last week. And then here's a decent bullpen. It ranks 7th. It does have an xFIP of 405, but it's only allowing a 143 batting average. And then you can see as this data fills in here for the pitchers, these logs are going to change. So right now it just says like hot team, bad pitcher, mini diamond stack. Well, we don't have any ERA for the pitcher, so it's really not, it's missing a lot of the information. So I'm doing my best not to touch it and let this next 4 or 5 days, these pitchers get a second start and stats start filling in. So these labels fill out, and then this algo is going to fill out, and that's going to look pretty good and be a lot of fun to build with. So right now I've been swamped at work, so that's kind of what I'm waiting on. But these are some of the things that I do when looking for stacks. I mean, you can come over here and say, okay, what team's averaging the most runs per game over the last 14 days? How are they versus Vegas? What pitchers are they facing? So like St. Louis, they've been doing they've been absolutely on fire lately. Now, it's not a main slate game, so it'd be a showdown. Vegas is projecting them really low. They're going up against a good pitcher. But we know Woodruff struggled the first time, so maybe you do a St. Louis stack while everybody else is playing Woodruff. There's so many different ways you can go here. I also like to come in here and sort by salary. And you can sort this from low to high and say, okay, who's the cheapest stacks I can get? So these are the 5 cheapest stacks. Vegas, what do they have? What's the weather look like over here? What do the pitchers look like? What do the bullpens look like? So one that jumps out at me is right here. So I'm not a big fan of Pittsburgh. They're not scoring that many runs, but they are dirt cheap. They're projected for a decent amount of runs. This pitcher, I don't know. He's a rookie, so we don't have any data on him. But the bullpen's even bad when he comes out of the game. The bullpen ranks 27th, 4.49 xFIP, and giving up a 270 average. So that'd be a stack I'd take a chance on. It's cheap, and then I could put in anyone I want to fill it in. Or if you want to go expensive, just come over here and sort it high to low and say, okay, who's the most expensive stacks? Well, of course, the one with the highest projected runs in Vegas and the wind blowing out is going to be pretty chalky, but, maybe you want to play chalky. Maybe you're playing a double up. You can kind of go from there. You can see here the Phillies are really expensive, and Vegas only projects them at 3.7 runs. So to me, that would be a little bit of a red flag. But you can really utilize this tab and narrow down some of the teams that you want to go after. When I'm building stacks, I typically want to do one that's like chalk, I think going to score a lot of runs. I like to do one completely contrarian that's super cheap against the best pitcher and just hope he gets lit up. And then I like to do a couple mediums and stack the teams together, like do, 4 Tampa Bay, 4 White Sox, put them together if possible. But just, use the information. We'll have several videos going on for fantasy. Pitchers and hitters, we can get into this into great detail. And then my other favorite tab here is just the daily stacks tab. And so I use this a lot for sports betting and for stacking. So as always, just click inside this box. You'll see this caret appears. Click the drop down caret and you can scroll through all the teams up here and it will take you through them. Now, when you're on here, you can see how the team does versus righties versus lefties, how they do home versus road. We have our Vegas trends over here for record, totals, run line, overall home and road. So we got that split up. Their home road, lefty, righty, we break out their WRC plus, WOBA, batting average, OBP, ISO, and strikeout rate. So those are things, once the season gets going, you can start to see some trends of teams that are really good at home and really bad on the road, similar to college football. And one of the things we added this year was the last 12 game logs. I had 10, but I just wanted to make it 12. And you can see here, so the newest game should be up top as long as everything's pulling correctly. You can see your win-loss, what the score was, if they were home or road, and who they played. So that kind of helps me look back and say, okay, they've won 3 of the last 4 games. So I can look at that real quick. I can see how many runs they've scored or given up to give me a good idea of how they're doing. Right here in the middle, we've got our last 10 rankings. So this is last 10 game power rank up top. That's something I really focus on. Like if you get number 2 versus 28, that's kind of a red flag for me that I'm probably going to go after the 2 and hammer them. And then we also have some stats here the last 2 weeks as far as runs per game, home and road. The green is where they're at today. So this home team, the green, this is how many runs they scored home. This is the road. And then this one is green over here because this is what they're scoring on the road. And then you can see their overall last 2 week batting average, WOBA, how they rank in WRC plus, how they rank in home runs. And then one key for player props or betting is the strikeout rate. So typically I want to know if the team's strikeout rate, 25% is really high. And then we can come down here and we got all of our trends. We got their record, we got their win streak, their last 10 games, last 20 games, how they do versus teams over 500, under 500. All of these things you can take a look at and, break down for a stack depending upon how deep you want to be. If you don't want to spend a lot of information, just look at how many runs per game they're scoring, the pitcher they're facing, and what Vegas has. Vegas is usually spot on. I mean, they don't build them giant casinos and make hundreds of millions of dollars for nothing. They know what they're doing. So you can always come over here to this stacker tab, sort by Vegas projected runs, high to low, and say, okay, I want one of these teams. These are what I'm going to stack. And that's the simple way to do it. I like getting into these because this is going to show me the projected lineup for the team, and then you can look down here and see if the lineup is confirmed or not. So this lineup has been confirmed. Each time you open up the sheet down here below these, you'll see it, pending background refresh. What it's doing, it's going out and checking the starting lineup, and if it's changed to confirm, this will flip over to a confirmed lineup and it will bring in the actual batter. So if you're betting a game and it says no, Soto and Nelson Cruz might sit. But if it says confirmed, we know they're in and they're batting 2-3. So this kind of helps you with your stack. The most common stack is like a 1 through 5 or a 2 through 6. You'll hear people talk about a wrap stack, and that's where they'll go like 8-9, 1-2-3, or 7-8-9, 1-2 to be a little bit different. I bring in the batter hand. We have left, right, both. I bring in the position, and then I typically bring in the new stats, but I'm trying to get 2 weeks under my belt so it's not so skewed. But we'll bring in the batting average, the strikeout rate, and then WOBA and ISO versus the pitcher hand. Some guys only play versus righties. Some guys only play versus lefties. So you might see a guy that has a massive edge versus a pitcher hand. Like there are specifically guys who only play against lefties and they kill lefties. So this is where this is going to highlight that information. One of the things I have here is I built in a grade tab, and it's our own custom model that kind of ranks them. And you can see red, these are guys that are 95 and higher. And then we've got this orange gold for kind of the mediocre. So anytime you see some red guys, those are guys you really want to put in your stack. They're doing really well. They have good stats. For example, here we can see Juan Soto. Last year he had a 313 average. He had a low 12% strikeout rate, and he had a WOBA of 448, which is massive, versus right-handed pitching, and a 239 ISO. So you can glance down on the team and say, okay, he had the highest ISO, followed by Nelson Cruz. So these were the two biggest ISO guys versus right-handed pitching last year, and they hit back-to-back. So that's probably where I'm going to start my stack. And then you can see Josh Bell here has a grade of 100. He's averaging 11 fantasy points per game with a high of 20. So my stack, if I'm doing Washington, would be the 2, 3, 4 hitters. So you can either just take the 2, 3, 4 and do 4 or 5 from another team, or you could say, okay, I'm going to do 1 to 4, or I'm going to do 3 to 5. What I would not do is come in here and say, okay, I'm going to do 5 to 9, and I'm going to take these guys. Because when I'm looking at this, 4 of these guys have been doing crap. This blue means a real low fantasy point per game number. They haven't been doing anything. Lane Thomas has a massive strikeout rate, a low batting average last year, not very much power. So just look at the grade tab and then kind of build around those guys. We'll look at another game here. I'll show you one of the instances that happened to me last year on one of the MLB GPPs that I won. It wasn't big, it was like $1,000, but it was off $1, so I was pretty excited about it. So for example, let's see, this isn't going to be a good game to show you. Let's go down and take a look at the pitchers. So I love looking at this. This tab is what I look at by far. Most of the time, the pitcher and hitter tab, I don't even look at these. I'll look at the stack tab and I go straight to this tab and start digging in. So this is going to have the current season stats, which obviously pitchers haven't reached the minimum, so no one's got any stats yet, so it just blanks out. But this is going to show you lefty versus righty, and then home versus road. And so this here is going to be where their total stats fall. And then it's going to look just like this, but it's going to be up here. So think of this as the current season, and this is last season. So if it's a rookie, they're not going to have anything last season. If they don't have enough stats like Brubaker this year, we can go back and look at last season, and we can see their home and away totals. We can see their lefty-righty totals. But right here, this is going to give you their total stats, and then you can see how it splits out lefty versus righty, home versus road. Now, the top is where they are at. You can see here current split, opposite split. This current split is where they're at. So this pitcher is at home. And so this team up here is facing this pitcher. So you can look at everything side by side. So this pitcher, you can see the top here, the current split is away. So he is on the road. So this team is facing this pitcher, and his stats are going to be on the road, which he's a rookie, so he doesn't have any last year, and he doesn't have the minimum this year. So let's go over here and just look at Brubaker real quick. So he had 124.1 innings, ERA of 5.36, xFIP of 4, so pretty standard stats. Now, one of the things when you're looking at his ERA and xFIP, home versus road, he was much better at home. He had a 3.79 ERA versus 6.78 on the road. So Brubaker might be someone you want to stack against when he's on the road. Now, he's at home on this particular instance, but just keep that in mind or write it on a Post-it note like, hey, when Brubaker goes on the road, maybe that's a place we take a stack at. People might be looking and saying, hey, he's got a 5.36 ERA, but I look at this and say, hey, he did much better at home. On the road, it was even higher. It was almost 7. And it was 65 innings, so we got a decent amount of innings. So if he's on the road, let's go stack him. That's one of the things that's going to jump out at me. xFIP, you can kind of look at the same. It's about a half a run difference, so not as much. WOBA, you can see there's a giant split. Only a 306 at home, a 370 on the road. And then K9 rate stayed about the same, which is good. And his WHIP, so your WHIP is walks and hits and innings pitched. So typically 1.1 and 1.15 and less is good. If it's over 1.2, it's league average to poor. So you can see here at home, he had a 1.11. That was great, but on the road, a 1.46. And then if you just want to look at batting average, he allowed a 231 at home and a 273 on the road. So drastic differences here. So I may not necessarily stack against him at home unless I've got like an edge or something I want to see, but always look at the splits. Also, when you're doing your stacks, if let's say we're going to do this Soto, Cruz, Bell, I want to scroll up here, and another thing I want to look at is there any batter versus pitcher history? So here we have 3, 5, and 1 at-bats, so I'm going to say no. Not a lot of BVP that I can look at. And then over here I can see the batter handedness, so we've got Soto, who's a lefty, Cruz is a righty, Josh Bell's a switch hitter, so we got a little bit of everything. And then you come down here, so how do you do versus righties, lefties? So versus righties, he was really pretty good. He had a 3.84 xFIP, he had a 9.8 K9 rate, a .25 whip, and a 239 batting average. So that he was good against righties. But versus lefties, it was a different story. Now, not much, but he had an ERA of 5.14, xFIP over 4, lower K9 rate by about 1K per 9 innings. But his whip went from .25 to 1.38, and the batting average went from 239 to 269. So here we would want to target lefties. So when we look up here at the guys we like, well, who's the lefty? Juan Soto. And he is an absolute beast. He's doing well. He is expensive, so I would say, hey, if you're not going to stack Washington, maybe throw Juan Soto in if you've got room for a stud outfielder to just fill in one of your stacks, because Brubaker is not good against lefties. And sorry, I'm talking so much, I'm starting to lose my voice. I should have brought in some more water with me. But that's just something else to look at. And also we have the bullpen here, so you can see how they rank and their particular stats. If you want to get real specific, I love coming down here and seeing how they've done over recent games. So this is the last game, second game, third game, and we're going to take it all the way 16 games back and see how they've done. So looking here, Josh Bell has been absolutely crushing it. He has 12, 14, 18, 5, 5, and 20 DK points. So he doesn't have a dud game yet. He's put points up in every single game. In the last 3 games, he's been 12 or better. So that's someone I would look at only $4,000. Someone that we can definitely take a look at. Now, Cruz, if we look at him, he's a little more up and down. He has 0, 0, and a 0. So he has 3 dud games. Excuse me. But you can just kind of flip around here and take a look at it and come up with your stacks. And I mean, just looking through all of this stuff, you can see stacks, you can see pitchers, and you can start to hand build and put together your lineups. Up here, I like looking at teams. Like, take it with a grain of salt. Again, there's not very many games, but look at the Phillies versus right-handed pitching. Now, they have 5 games built up, but they have a big 27.4% strikeout rate versus righties. But versus lefties, it's only 20.9. Now, there's only 1 game, so take it with a grain of salt, but this just shows you, like, okay, hey, if they were facing a lefty, that's probably not a pitcher I'm going to take, but someone I'm going to stack. But if they're going up against a righty, okay, I don't mind taking a right-handed pitcher against them because they have a high strikeout rate. And you can also look at their average, look at their WOBA. I like looking at the WRC plus because that's just kind of a catch-all number to tell, hey, are they above average or below average versus them or whatnot. And you can do the same thing with home and road. It will show you these, which they don't have any road games yet, so they've all been at home, so we don't really have anything there. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else fantasy-wise. So like here would be a really good stack. So here we see 4 of the top 5 hitters grade in the red. So earlier I said it's 95 and up. It looks like it's 90 and up, or 90.5, because we have a 91 and 93. So these players are doing really well, but you can see this average cost per hitter in red, it's over $5,000, so it is going to be very expensive. And then when you come down here and you kind of take a look at it, you can see, you know, production's kind of spread out up and down, nothing really amazing. But Definitely use this. I mean, this is such a key tool. There's so much data in here. I love sitting around and looking at it and digging in. I just have not had time this week. We also have our little model that we put in here that kind of encompasses the pitcher, the bullpen, and how the team is doing to give you a rough idea to see how it is versus Vegas. So like, for example, in this game, you can see Vegas has it at 5.3, 5.7. We've got it at 4.2, 4.3. So if that's a chalky stack, I probably wouldn't stack that game. I'd go somewhere else. But yeah, you can flip down through here. You can see, so who is this? The Cubs. So their production's been horrible. All this blue is bad. The one guy, whoever this Seiya Suzuki, he's been absolutely killing it. Let's go down here and see how he's done per game. All right, so he's got 11, 20, didn't play 28 and 7. So yeah, he's doing pretty good. I'd say he'd be a good guy. He is 4,800 though. But you can look down here and see which guys have been hitting some green. So here, Connor Joe, 15, 19, 9, and 19. He's been putting up some good DK points. But yeah, just use this, stack some teams back and forth. Like I said, look at the confirmed lineups. Every time you open this, it's going to reach out and update these lineups. So if you download the sheet in the morning and you go to work, you come home from lunch, open it up, let it run, and save it. And it's going to update those lineups again. Like Suzuki, he is a rookie, so he doesn't have any stats here. But when I flip it over to 2022, all of these are going to start filling in, and it's going to look pretty good. So that will be good. So this is my quick tutorial as far as fantasy information and looking up stacks and the teams that you want to go after. This is what I would do. So I'm sorry the video was so long. I hope it was very thorough and kind of showed you a lot going on. I'm trying to flip through here and see if there's anything else that jumped out at me that we did or did not talk about. One of the things I do want to point out before we get off here, let me scroll over so you can see this, is this batter versus pitcher data. So for this entire starting lineup, I bring it all down and I total it up. So this is one key column that I focus on. So here, we talked about Wainwright earlier, 187 at-bats versus this lineup. I want to look through here and see if they're spread out, which here they are. You have one guy, McCutcheon's got 71. We got a 30, a 30, a 17, a 15, and a 10. So it's pretty good. Now, if he had 80 at-bats and 71 of them were McCutcheon, you can use your common sense and say, okay, you know, that's not good BVP data. But here, you can get a good idea of like what the team's done, especially with the 187 at-bats. They only have 2 home runs, but they have a low 17% strikeout rate. And hitting 251, so pretty average for the most part. And then we also have a fantasy grade, just says like low, mid, good, or really hot for how the players are doing. It does take a little bit of work to dig in, look at some stuff, but once we get a little bit more data, I'll start digging in and plugging out some stacks and stuff that I like, and we'll add on to this little cheat sheet model here. So for daily fantasy, this is kind of what I would use for stacking. This is one of the funnest things to do. So anyways, good luck, guys.